What is the main appeal of the Pokémon brand? This here is definitely a question that doesn't really have a correct or definitive answer. Like most things in life, there is plenty of subjectivity here. After all, Pokémon is a series which is enjoyed by a lot of different people and for a lot of different reasons. But I think at the very least we could all agree on what's at the very core of it all: the Pokémon. The literal namesake of the IP. Everyone out there has at least that one Pokémon that they could just never get enough of. I sure do have mine. But the far more subjective thing here is that Pokémon is a JRPG. A genre that is far from everyone's cup of tea. Many people out there just can't get into this series, which I think is perfectly understandable. This, however, is where Pokémon Snap comes into play. Released in Japan on March 21st, 1999 and developed by HAL Laboratory, Pokémon Snap is quite the unique entry to say the least. Instead of being centered around a big adventure with a focus on exploration and combat, this is a first-person rail shooter where your goal isn't to fight or collect Pokémon, but rather to take pictures of them. Catching Pokémon is a snap, as they say, on the box. Now, when I first heard of Pokémon Snap, I remember pretty vividly thinking to myself, wow, this is stupid. Try to insert yourself into the mindset of a 10-year-old. Photography is like the most boring thing imaginable. I don't wanna take photos of Pokémon, I wanna collect them all. They made a whole freaking song about that, and now they want me to silently watch them? Oh hell nah, I'm getting Pokémon Dash instead. As time went on though, Pokémon Snap would go on to be one of, if not debatably, the most beloved Pokémon spin-off title. And the thing that I find interesting here is that this seems to be the one Pokémon game that everyone, at the very least, likes. You wouldn't believe how many times I came across people who are like, yeah, I hate Pokémon, the only game in the series I actually like is Pokémon Snap. It being as unique as it is probably had a number in that, but I still find this whole thing intriguing. Now, I never actually played Pokémon Snap before, though I do recall watching some Let's Plays of it a few years back. So while I have a pretty solid recollection of a lot of Snap, this is still going to be a largely blind playthrough. Now, N64 emulation is notoriously kinda terrible, and Pokémon Snap is one such game with a lot of compatibility issues. It took me a while to settle on a method to play it, and taking care of configurations was kind of a nightmare, let me tell you. I was originally planning on playing the game on Dolphin using a fan-made HD texture pack, but the issue with that is that the game often just doesn't recognize photos, so that was a no-go. Most options on Project 64 were even more problematic, as they had some noticeable graphical glitches, and were sometimes not even able to recognize any photos. But I did eventually settle on the Angry Lion plugin for Project 64, which makes Pokémon Snap 100% playable, barring a bit of lag in the opening cutscene. It does sadly make the footage pretty pixelated with a lot of dithering, but I take the game actually working over it looking slightly prettier. Sorry for the long technical mumbling, just wanted to get it all out of the way up front. So without further ado, let's see what all the hype is about. This is Pokémon Snap. Our intro sets up a mystery. We see this kid, aka our protagonist, officially known as Todd Snap. Likely because of that last name, he felt obliged to take up business in photography. Currently, he's trying to take a photo of this mysterious creature, who is obviously Mew. I love how it's always just barely out of sight. It really makes you want to just snap that deformed cat thing. Eventually though, Mew gets away, and Todd is clearly distraught. I mean, just look at this shaking wrist, he's clearly enraged over here. Luckily for him, he is aided by the returning Professor Oak, whose appearance is based on his anime incarnation. He also supports a few voice samples. Most of his dialogue isn't voice acted, he kinda just spouts a few words here and there. Just like in the anime, Professor Oak is voiced by Stuart Zagnit. And man, I absolutely love this performance. It is incredibly cheesy, but I could not imagine a better voice for this absolute legend of a character.
Hello there. Wonderful. You were close.
It is just way too iconic, and honestly I think it's a big reason Oak is so memorable to me. Our premise here is a simple one, once again taking place on an island, this time known as Pokémon Island. Okay, look, it's a stupid name, but a name is better than no name. Unlike the TCGGB Island, which was inhabited entirely by nerds who love cardboard just a little bit too much, Pokémon Island is a Pokémon-filled paradise. There are a few things that imply that humans might have lived there a while ago, but I'm guessing they all just died out or something. Professor Oak and Todd are here on a mission, take pictures of all Pokémon species which inhabit the island, in order to fill up Oak's Pokémon report, so he can do something with it. Instead of Todd actually freely moving around to take the Pokémon photos, you know, like how we saw in the freaking intro, he'll instead be driving around using Oak's 01 vehicle, which will automatically take Todd through 6 courses, each showing off the island's unique and varied environments. For me, this will always cement Todd Snap as the absolute laziest Pokémon protagonist, but whatever, I'm honestly not much better in that regard. Enough stalling around, let's press A to get on with it. As you begin, the game immediately teaches you its rules perfectly. There are 3 Pidgeys flying your way, and the game is nice enough to pause itself, letting you familiarize yourself with how you'd want to take your photos. Oak mainly judges your pictures based on 3 factors. A. How big is the Pokémon in the picture? B. Is the Pokémon facing the camera? And C. Is the Pokémon in the middle of the frame? You will also sometimes get bonus points if the picture has multiples of the same Pokémon in it. And it's best if the center Pokémon is making some kinda cool pose. Now the scoring system in Pokémon Snap is one aspect I see often criticized about it. Making an AI that judges pictures isn't the easiest of things. Even to this day, it's a technology that's been far from perfected. And I'd honestly say that for the most part, Professor Oak does a pretty solid job. But I think the main issue people have with it is that the game really only judges your pictures based on the 3 factors listed above. With real-life photography, you often want to have the main subject and background environment nicely complement each other. Both are about equally as important for the final photo. A picture of a lion in its natural habitat will definitely look better than the same lion at a local McDonald's. Photography is a subject far more complicated than many would lead you to believe, and it is a field I am far from an expert in. There is a whole lot that goes into it, which isn't really the case when it comes to Pokémon Snap. Professor Oak doesn't care where the Pokémon is, what it's interacting with, or any of that crap. All he cares about is that the Pokémon is big, front-facing, and in the middle of the goddamn frame, because that's what makes a picture good. Most of the time. You see, Professor Oak is one mysterious creature, because he has a few very specific image conditions that, if met, will reward you with a buttload of bonus points. Now, some of these are admittedly pretty cool. In the cave level, for example, if you stop these coughings from chasing down these Jigglypuffs, they'll all give you a cute little performance at the end. And capturing that moment on film is definitely 1200 points worthy. But then there's also stuff like a Pikachu on a stomp, which is valued at 1300 points. This literally makes no sense whatsoever. What exactly is it about a Pikachu on a stump that's worth bonus points? And more bonus points than performing Jigglypuffs at that. These special score conditions just feel way too arbitrary and could have honestly been executed far better. Now personally, this stuff doesn't bother me all too much. As long as you follow the 3 main conditions, you should mostly get pretty solid scores. But more than that, the score honestly doesn't matter that much. Some abilities are locked behind specific score gates, but the highest overall score you'll ever need is 130,000, which on a casual playthrough is very easily achievable. After that, your score doesn't really matter too much. All that's really important is that you get a photo of every Pokémon. My final overall score was 172,420. Now I'm sure you could do far better than that if you really wanted to, but personally I don't. And I mean, if you really want to, you can still take your own epic Pokémon pictures and completely disregard whatever bullcrap Professor Oak has to say about them. Over the years I've seen a bunch of really cool photos taken in Pokémon Snap, and that in it of itself is pretty neat. And even ahead of its time in a way. You know how every new AAA game just feels the need to include some kind of photo mode? Well, Pokémon Snap was technically doing that stuff over 20 years ago. They even had blockbuster vendors you could use to physically print your photos. And no, I'm not about to go on a long-ass rant explaining what blockbuster was. I'm pretty sure that if you are watching this video, it has already been explained to you tenfold by other content creators. Pokémon Snap's photo taking aspect is neat. That's probably the word I'd use to describe it. And to be honest, I don't even think it's the main reason people love the game so much. I think the actual main reason Pokémon Snap is so beloved is because of how well designed and meticulously crafted all 6 of its stages are. I know saying that a game has heart is a statement that has gotten way overused and practically lost all meaning, especially when talking about this franchise. But for Pokémon Snap, there honestly isn't any better descriptor. All of these courses are absolutely brimming with life, and that's mostly owed to how well realized all the Pokémon are. For what is really the first time in the series we get to see them in their natural habitat, completely separated from human interference. It's kinda stupid, but Pokémon moving about and enjoying their lives is just inherently charming. They all have distinct personalities that are conveyed purely by action, using their abilities to do things like camouflaging, blowing wind, and committing homicide. They also carry over their cries from the anime, meaning they shout their names at you on a regular basis. Neat. These Pokémon also feel like they belong in these areas, nothing feels out of place. With the exception of Pikachu, who is pretty shamelessly shoved into 4 of the game's 6 levels, most of which he really doesn't belong at. But I get it, you gotta push your mascot somehow. And as for what I think is the absolute coolest thing about the Pokémon, they very often interact with each other, and don't just exist within their own bubbles. You see Pidgeys teaming up to blow wind on a Meowth, Charmander and Magmar fighting over food, Mankey absolutely knocking this Magikarp out of the freaking park. All of these courses are very akin to theme park rides. You get to drive in your vehicle as everything around you puts on a show. It's a lot of fun, but there is a pretty noticeable catch here, and that is that Pokémon Snap is a short game. Wickedly short, as in like, you can complete the entire thing in a single casual session short. And with how much detail was put into almost every corner of it, that's honestly not that much of a wonder. All of the stages are really only like 2 to 4 minutes long. And while there is definitely replay value in trying to take better pictures, I feel that doing that would get repetitive relatively quickly, for me at least. If you're only trying to get one photo of every Pokémon each, then you won't really need to go through them very often, as Pokémon Snap only has 63 of the original 151 Pokémon in it. Again, with how unique they all are, I think expecting the entire roster to be here to be a bit on the unrealistic side. I personally feel that 63 is a good enough number for this kind of game, and for what it's worth I am content with most of the Pokémon they chose to be here. Except for Jinx. Fuck Jinx. I'm personally fine with the games that's shorter than average runtime. Sometimes it's nice to be able to start and finish something in a day. Makes you feel like you're making progress in life. But I can see why many people would love for this to have more content. This is probably a big reason why a sequel to Pokémon Snap was as heavily requested as it was for so long. For what it's worth, the game doesn't really have any filler and is pretty fast-paced, which is better than being overly bloated. And if you plan on going through the game a bunch of times to get good photos, then at the very least you're accompanied by a pretty solid soundtrack. The Pokémon Snap OST is good. I wouldn't say there's anything particularly amazing here, but it is nice and fitting for all of the respective locations. Pleasant would be the word I'd use to describe it. All around enjoyable stuff. Because of the game's restrictive nature, the developers were able to go absolutely wild with the visuals. This is one of the absolute best looking games on the N64, while most games on the system used a lot of 2D assets to save on memory, which nowadays are pretty noticeable and haven't aged all that well. Pokémon Snap's areas are comprised of almost entirely 3D assets, and it looks great. Great for N64 at the very least. Now the game isn't entirely 3D. All of the menus and Professor Oak are 2D, as well as a few extra items. However, those are honestly not very distracting in my opinion. But let's go over said extra items, why won't we? At the start of the game you only have your basic camera, which can only hold up to 60 films, and it never gets upgraded. But honestly, the film limit is barely even noticeable. All of the levels are very short, so for most of the game, I was able to pretty easily get by just spamming the capture button like a madman. Pokémon Snap is played entirely in first person, and that of course means you're gonna have to do some aiming. And with emulation, N64 games are pretty notorious for having overly sensitive and terrible aiming. But honestly, and I'm not sure why it is exactly, I found the aiming controls in Pokémon Snap to be just about perfect. The game even allows you to do stuff like quick turning and centering your view. It never felt like I was missing shots because of the controls. I even went back to Ocarina of Time using the same emulator configurations to see if it was just overblown, but no, this is still complete garbage. In general, Pokémon Snap has aged way better than most other games on the system. It still feels really solid. Contrary to its name, however, in Pokémon Snap you won't just be using your camera. As you progress through the game, Professor Oak will award you with extra items that could be used to influence the island's Pokémon. The first of which is the apple-shaped Pokémon food. This is meant to be used to bait Pokémon into wherever you want them to go. Usually you'd want to get them closer to the camera, or lead them to interact with stuff. Now I'm saying meant to be used because that's not what you're actually going to use Pokémon food for. What Pokémon food is actually used for is annoying the ever-living shit out of them. When hit with Pokémon food, Pokémon usually turn towards you and perform some kinda pose, aka what you want them to be doing when taking photos of them, meaning this is how I used them for most of my playthrough. The second item you get is the Pester Ball. Unlike the Pokémon food, which is meant to lure Pokémon but can also be used to get their attention, the Pester Balls are purely designed to assault Pokémon. Basically, it emits a poisonous gas that makes most Pokémon run away, often getting them out of hiding spots. I personally find this to be on the slightly too cruel side. In a game that so prides itself on displaying the beauty of nature, it is a bit messed up letting its protagonist absolutely decimate the local ecosystem, all just because he wanted to get some pretty photos. I guess this probably is a thing thing that's often done with real-life photography, but I think that for Pokémon it is a bit on the extreme side. Unlike film, you have an infinite supply of Pokémon food and pester balls, meaning you can basically just relentlessly throw them all the time without any consequences, aka how I play the game. Next up is my favorite upgrade, the Dash Engine. Instead of affecting the Pokémon, this upgrade instead has an effect on the 0-1 vehicle, letting you hold R to double its speed, which in turn makes it absolutely blaze through the game's courses. You only unlock it after finishing all of the regular stages, and it makes going back to them in order to get one specific photo way easier. This honestly adds a ton of replay value in my opinion. The regular speed isn't bad, but when you only want to take care of one certain part, this is a godsend. And finally we have the Pokémon Flute. Out of all of the upgrades and items, this one honestly feels the most like an afterthought. Playing it can elicit some reactions out of Pokémon. It makes Pikachu emit a bunch of electricity for example, as well as making some Pokémon dance for some reason. Look at them go. Compared to the Pokémon food and pester balls, this has far less utility. You kinda just need to use it whenever the game feels like it to trigger very specific things. I feel like this is only here because they needed a fourth upgrade and didn't want it to just be another thing you throw. Meh. The main purpose of these upgrades is mostly to find hidden Pokémon. There are a lot of puzzles you have to solve in order to make some Pokémon show up or evolve, and most of these are pretty neat, even if they don't often go past just having to throw a pester ball in some hole or something. Early on, the game sets up a lot of mystery with stuff you can't interact with, like, what the hell is this pink ball Easy is chasing? Well, throwing a pester ball at it reveals it to be a Chansey. None of these secrets feel too cryptic, with the exception of a few Pokémon who will only show up if you already took a photo of a Pokémon from earlier. In the cave level there's this Grimer over here who, for absolutely no reason, will only appear if you already took a photo of this Grimer earlier in the run. There is absolutely no correlation here, and from what I could tell, nothing in the game hints at this. And yes, you do need this Grimer to be here, because it is the only Grimer in the game that's close enough for you to throw pester balls at, which will evolve it into Mach. These types of puzzles are thankfully the exception rather than the rule, but they're still here and they still put a bad taste in my mouth. My favorite puzzle in the game is actually one that isn't for uncovering a secret Pokémon, but rather for uncovering a secret exit. In the valley level, which is bar none my absolute favorite in the game. It's like a giant water slide and it has— oh, Sandshrew! He's so cute! Anyways, where was I? Oh, yeah. So near the end of the stage, you see a couple of Squirtles rolling towards the top of this hill, which has a Mankey dominating it. One of these Squirtles, however, stays in place, but if you throw a pester ball at it from just the right angle, you can knock the Mankey over to the other side, and after throwing a pester ball at it to piss it off one last time, he lands on a switch, opening the secret exit. Environmental puzzles like this are really dope. I felt really smart figuring this out. This alternate exit leads us to Professor Oak's secret hideout. No, this is never explained, but honestly I'd rather it not be explained. Professor Oak is such a ridiculous character as it is, and the more I don't know, the better. It's cool getting to see him with a different outfit, I guess. If this was a gacha game, I'm pretty sure this would have been a pretty rare one. As we get here, Oak tells us about the 6 secret Pokémon signs. Throughout the island are 6 sceneries which resemble Pokémon in appearance, and Oak, thinking it has to do with some important Pokémon business, wants us to catalog them so that he could further research the phenomenon. This is basically Pokémon Snap's endgame quest. Each level has a sign, and in order to beat the game you have to take photos of all of them. I was able to find most Pokémon signs pretty easily, as they definitely stand out and the camera often hints you in the right direction. But I do kinda take issue with the one in the cave. There's a bunch of weird glowy crystals over over here that, if taken a photo of at just the right moment, will reveal themselves to resemble Mewtwo when the photo develops. Now, to be fair, this isn't the first time the game has done something like this. In the second stage there are these floating orbs that, if taken a picture of, will reveal themselves to be Hunter. Now I do like that, because Hunter is the only ghost type in the game, so making it invisible to the naked eye, you know, it's cool. But with these crystals, bleh. I think it's just way too cryptic if you're trying to get all of the signs. They definitely could have made them actually resemble Mewtwo, and then it would have been a non-issue. The only reason I even found this sign was because I thought the area was suspicious. So I just spammed capture on my camera, taking like 20 photos of this wall. And I don't really think that that is the intended method of discovering this. But how well, all 6 signs have been photographed, and Professor Oak has come to the brilliant realization: all 6 of these signs resemble the 6 constellations looming over Pokémon Island. So connecting all of the dots, all 2 of the dots, the key to this mystery...
It's the sky.
Rainbow Cloud, the secret course, is located there. And someone in Rainbow Cloud, presumably a Pokémon, has clearly been creating all of these signs in Pokémon Island, and now we can go there to confront them. So you might argue that none of this makes any sort of sense whatsoever. Why and how would someone create sceneries resembling constellations? And how can we just decide to go there? But you see people, there is one thing you have yet to realize. This was the theory crafted by Professor Oak. And as we all know, nary a single human being has ever come close to matching the IQ and pure genius of Professor Oak. His words are law. You don't question it. We as Toad are just another one of his pawns, just like Red and Ash and the kid from Hey You Pikachu, I guess. Only there to feed his sick desire. So yeah, anyways, the final course, it's just a linear path where you face off against the mad Pokemon who dare to create all of these signs, contain your shock, and oh, it's Mew. You can't actually take a photo of it right away. He's protected by this photo-proof bubble you have to break using Pokemon food or pester balls. If you want to count it as such, this is probably one of the easiest final bosses I have ever seen. But I at least like the area itself with all of the constellations, and it is cool how the music here shares its motif with the intro theme, really driving this home as Mew's theme. The picture is taken and the oak is beckoned. You get a bunch of bonus points for Mew. Even though it was pretty far away, it was still by far my highest scoring photo, beating the previously undisputed champion that was the almighty Pikachu on a stump. And that is how Pokémon Snap ends. I like how the credits show some of the photos you actually took during your journey. I mean, my photos are kinda terrible, but it's a good way to cap things off. You do also unlock this core attack mode after finishing the game, which does technically give it even more replay value, but again, I'm not one to care about high scores. I already took a photo of every single Pokemon on Pokémon Island, so I personally feel pretty comfortable calling this here. I made Oak proud. I've got nothing left to prove. And that was Pokémon Snap. Finally fully playing it after hearing so much about it over the years, I can definitely see why it is so beloved. It focuses less on action or being the best at stuff, and is instead a fun ride through the magical world of Pokémon. It never really gets repetitive, and again, it's a pretty damn unique game. It's a premise that sounds absolutely absurd when you first hear about it, but it also definitely starts to click once you actually play it. Pokémon Snap is far from amazing. It's highly lacking in content and the scoring system could have been far better. It is honestly not something I think everyone owes themselves to play, or that it will change your lives forever. What I do think it is, and what I assume is a large reason why it is so revered nowadays, is one of those few games that is almost virtually impossible to hate. You may not like it, which I think is perfectly understandable, but I don't think I have ever seen a single person who actively hates it. And man, saying that about a Pokemon game of all things sure is unusual. Pokémon Snap is just inherently a likable, charming and simply fun short time. I think the only reason people would have to actively hate it is purely because they might have been sick of it because of how every internet user and their grandmother hailed it as the greatest thing ever during the late 2010s. Pokémon Snap is not the greatest thing ever, but what it is a pretty great thing that I was happy to finally check out. If you're a Pokémon fan, I definitely recommend it, because if you don't play it, Professor Oak will come to you at night. I did warn you after all.
You were close.
But setting all of that aside, my next voyage into the Pokémon franchise will be with Pokémon Pinball for the Game Boy Color. These are all things that deserve dedicated videos, damn it. But until then, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I would highly appreciate it if you shared it around. It would really help me out and make me happier than you could ever imagine. So until next time,
See you.